Winter Roses by fairytalelovr, Chapter 34, A Whirlwind of Emotions. A whirlwind of emotion kept a dark cloud and bad moods for several days over the Tower of the Hand. The girls managed to overcome the hurdle and came out of themselves. Ella threw herself into the preparations for the wedding, but every now and again Catelyn's words came up as a weight on her shoulders. Day after day, week after week, the subject was closed. Fast. Too fast. They had to send over a big card and arrange for Bran's name day gift, and, soon after, prepare for Arya's. But then it was too close to the wedding, and Jon sent a raven saying they were boarding the Lady Daenerys to come south. Ned was amused, watching his wife running around and preparing the tower for their guests down to every detail, such as demanding to know everyone's favourite food, and decorating Rickon's chambers with great care. He wanted to go down to the docks and meet them off the boat, but there was council business he couldn't avoid, so when Ned finally made it back, he could hear the ruckus from the courtyard, and found his whole family, except for Bran, having tea and laughing loudly. Rickon jumped from Sansa's lap, where he was being tickled by his sisters, and ran across the room yelling, "Father!" and threw himself around Ned's knees. He laughed, picking him up and into a hug. He joined the others and Lyanna, who had been in Ella's lap playing with her hair, slid to the floor and crawled over, raising her tiny arms and babbling, demanding to be picked up. Rickon frowned at her, tightening his hold on Ned's shoulder, making clear he was going nowhere. Ned laughed again, securing Rickon in one arm and bending over to pick up Lyanna with the other. "I can see your arms are too full to say hello to your other sons, father," Robb joked. Ned laughed. "Hello, Robb. Hello, Jon. I'm sure grown men like you can wait your turn."
"Robb is just jealous, father,"
Arya teased. Then the sibling rivalry picked up and one started teasing the other. They were laughing at a joke Benjen told when Jory came into view, breaking up the family reunion. "Excuse me, my lord," he said. "There is a man here to see you. He is quite insistent." "Who?" Ned demanded, looking up from Lyanna, who hadn't left his lap. "He wouldn't give a name, my lord. Said only he needed to see you soon, that he was late because he was supposed to be here and bring these news with the dawn in the morning," Jory said, confused, as it was just getting to noon. Ella dropped the cup and saucer she had been holding, making the iced tea spill out over her dress and the floor, her heart beating erratic in her chest.
"Ella!"
Sansa exclaimed, pulling her skirts away from the direction of the spill.
I'm sorry, dear. I was terribly clumsy."
She looked up at Ned, her face pale in shock. "Sansa, Arya, take Rickon and show him the rest of the tower. Now," Ned ordered quickly. The girls understood from his tone that there was no arguing. "Show him in, Jory, and tell no one." The guard nodded and left. Ella stood up, uncaring about the hem of her dress was getting spoiled, and waited impatiently until the door opened again. She cried out and crossed the room, throwing her arms around the man as if he'd vanish otherwise. He chuckled, a deep and throaty sound, as if he was unused to doing it, and squeezed her back just as fiercely. "I missed you too, little sister." His voice was gruff but soft.
"You're mad!"
she cried, pulling back with her face drenched in tears.
"How? Why? Others take you, Arthur. How can you just come here of all places?"
"I didn't let the stupid beard grow on my face out of love for how it looks, Ash. I look like a beggar. No one will spare me a speck and glance, let alone look for a man long dead." She sobbed again and pulled him in for another hug. He smiled as he allowed her time to fuss, but looked around the room. Robb and Jon were staring at them, shocked but exhilarated. They were in the presence of Arthur Dayne! Sir Arthur Dayne! The Sword of the Morning! Arthur bit back his comment as he broke up the hug and turned to Ned. "About time, Lord Stark."
"You're not starting, Arthur," Ella said. "Neither of you are."
She sent a warning look to Ned as well. "There's nothing to start, little sister. I just meant—"
"I know what you meant, Artie. And I doubt this argument has changed anything from when you had it 17 years ago."
Ned knew better than to say anything, though he knew Arthur would say what he wanted to say the minute Ella turned her back. "These are my sons, Robb and Jon," he introduced. Arthur looked to them. "You," he started, and Ella pinched his arm, giving him a meaningful look. He rolled his eyes. Nice to make your acquaintance. My brother Benjamin and his wife Isla. Arthur's eyes focused on a woman and glinted in recognition. My lord, my lady. And I have to say, Ned started, but when Arthur turned back to him, his eyes were focused on the girl still in his arms. Lyanna looked curiously at the newcomer, but then decided she wanted a closer look and started wiggling to be put down. Ned did as she asked, and she crawled across the room, stopping by Arthur's feet. He crouched down, a smile on his face. Hello there, little princess. She smiled, suddenly shy, and crawled all the way back to her mother. Danny picked her up, and Lyanna promptly hid her face on her mother's neck, taking amused chuckles from the others. Ned cleared his throat. I'm sure you understand the dangers of your presence. Arthur rolled his eyes. No, I've been hiding in a hut in the middle of nowhere for the past 17 years because my presence in Robert's court would be very welcome. Ella pinched him again and he cried out, Fine! I'm sorry! Yes, Lord Stark, I understand the danger. But I have precautions in place that won't allow anyone to recognize me. Well, not anyone who doesn't know I'm alive. Plus, I could hardly miss my little sister's wedding. I'll have rooms prepared for you, Ella said, interrupting before they could start butting heads again, as was their habit. Come, we have loads to catch up to. She dragged him away, ignoring Ned's eye roll and clear irritation. Arthur finally removed his cloak once they were inside her solar, and the door was barred. His dark hair was beginning to show some speckles of grey, but it was still mostly dark. He went to the near perch of the window and patted Dawn's head. Where's Dusk? She asked. Did you bring him? Arthur rolled his eyes. Can we make it a rule that Alaria is forbidden from naming another hawk? I might have suggested it already. Ella laughed, though she wasn't pleased. Apparently I lack the sense of humour and appreciation for jokes. And she did name the Ayers Noon, so I'm guessing she's having fun. He scoffed but decided not to comment. I sent a letter to Big Brother. He said she looks just like Mother. She does, though she is more like Father underneath. Well, God's help Lord Dondarrion, then, Arthur laughed. And may they also protect their children from the insanity of their mother's name-giving. Ella joined his laughter. Hear, hear! But you didn't travel all this way, facing untold dangers, to talk to me about our little sister. He chuckled. You're still as sharp as ever. He raised his wrist, showing her bracelet with a charm. It's a glamour. She frowned. You refused to buy that when we were in Essos. Did you go back there? I made sure to board a ship that would stop by Bravos before coming here. I figured I was done hiding out and like that. And like you said, we don't all have a need for a full-blown war yet. Besides, swallowing my pride and wearing a disguise is a price I'm willing to pay to attend your wedding. She smiled, coming over to hug him. This was the best gift I ever could have gotten. Don't know about that, he said, taking a strand of her hair. Chamomile? Unnecessary evil, she said with a shrug. You hate dyeing your hair, he said, raising an eyebrow. Artie, you are much more recognisable than me. But if I didn't do anything, I would have been recognised. You know that. He pulled a second bracelet from his pocket. How does it work? She asked. You still look like Artie. He chuckled. To you and anyone who knows I'm alive. To anyone else, especially if they suspect it, they see me but they can't connect my face to my name. And you're sure it works? Well, Jaime Lannister used to follow me around like a puppy, saying I was his hero and example. If anyone would recognise me, it would be him. But he didn't. Walked past me, even helped me to my feet when one of his soldiers threw me down. But didn't know me from the baker down the street. She took the glamour he was offering. Thank you, then. I won't be sorry to stop dyeing my hair, and I'm sure Ned will rejoice that we can cut back on the whole chamomile tea thing. Not his favourite tea. Arthur, she warned. He chuckled, raising his hands up in surrender. Anyway, we have to come up with your story, brother. The next morning, Robert called everyone down to the throne room, demanding to meet Lyanna. Jon had clenched his jaw, and Daenerys had raged months ago, when they received Ned's raven telling of the king's wish, but knew there was nothing to do. So although they would very much prefer to leave Lyanna safely ensconced behind the walls of the Midnight Fortress with Sam, they had to bring her to the dangerous capital. The court had assembled for the presentation, and Daenerys only felt apprehension, squeezing Lyanna tighter in her arms. Intellectually, she knew Robert Baratheon wouldn't be stupid enough to try anything, not in front of so many people, and not when Ned Stark was his hand. She also knew that Ned, Jon, Benjen, Robb, and Arthur Dayne himself were surrounding her, ready to protect her daughter at any sign of danger. But even that wasn't enough consolation. But she put her meek mask into place, and followed 2 steps behind her husband, bowing when they were before the Iron Throne, even if she had to nearly use her hands to make her knees bend. The throne belonged to House Targaryen, not the fat usurper currently sitting on it. However, her family's safety was more important than her familial indignation.
"Rise, Lord Starling,"
the usurper said.
"My king."
Jon greeted, feeling the words hard to say.
"May I present my daughter, the Lady Lyanna Starling?"
Robert looked at the child in Daenerys' arms. Like Ned had said, she had dark hair that, like her father's, fell in curls to her shoulders, pulled back by a sash of blue silk, matching her pretty blue dress. The woman had her eyes downcast, but Robert wasn't even seeing her.
"Come closer, girl," he demanded. "I wish to see her properly."
Daenerys forced herself to keep breathing in and out and obeyed the king, feeling Jon move to keep in step with her. She stopped at the bottom of the steps leading to the throne, still facing down, Jon right next to her. Sir Meryn stepped forward, unsheathing a bit of his sword.
"That's close enough!"
he snapped threateningly. Ella squeezed her brother's arm, holding him back. The man was furious that his status of commoner didn't allow him to carry a sword on his hip, but he had several daggers strategically placed within the folds of his clothes. Ned, however, stepped forward, followed by Jory, who did the same gesture as the King's Guard.
"Shut up, you fool!" Robert called from the throne. "Put away your blade and go be stupid somewhere else. I said closer, girl."
The court was frozen, looking at the scene develop before them. Daenerys felt her heart fail a beat. Everyone but Robert seemed tense and anxious, but the king was oblivious to the commotion he was causing. Knowing what having Daenerys any closer to the throne could cause, Jon took Lyanna from her and made a show of pointing backward. Still keeping her head low, Daenerys stepped back, meekly distancing herself from the throne, hearing her blood roaring in her ears as Jon climbed the steps to the king. Still clueless to the tense atmosphere around him, Robert reached for the baby when Jon got close enough. Clenching his jaw, knowing he had no choice, Jon squeezed Lyanna's hand and obeyed, though he wanted nothing more than to take his wife and daughter and sail back home. The girl looked up to her father, who smiled encouragingly, and she turned to Robert. The king had tears in his eyes, holding the baby as if she were made of the finest porcelain.
"Oh, what a sweet child. You look like a Stark girl. Like your father. You are going to make your father and grandfather proud, aren't you? Their blood, the blood of the North, is stronger than the weakness cursed upon you. I can see that."
Jon forced himself not to react. Lyanna stayed quiet, what was completely uncharacteristic of her. It seemed the tenseness had impressed itself even on her, though she obviously had no idea what was happening. After a moment, though, she started to feel uncomfortable and whined, trying to turn away from Robert. In an attempt to keep her from falling, Robert moved brusquely to hold her, slicing the side of his hand on one of the barbs on the throne. Doing the same automatic move to catch his daughter, Jon felt the twisted metal passing against his arm, felt the burning sting of pain, and even heard the fabric of his sleeve tearing. He didn't care though, taking Lyanna and bringing her back into his arms. Taking the opportunity to escape as Sir Barristan brought a handkerchief for Robert's bleeding hand, John made the way down the steps and rejoined his family, stopping next to Daenerys, who hadn't yet lifted her eyes. Lyanna clutched her father's jerkin tightly, making clear she wasn't going to let go any time soon. While the king was sufficiently distracted, Ned managed to adjourn the court, and they all quickly returned to the sanctuary of the Tower of the Hand, provided amidst the gossip of the other courtiers. After the nerve-wracking court session, Daenerys and Jon had taken Lyanna and locked themselves in their chambers. The girl had been whiny and bothered, refusing to leave Jon's arms unless her mother was the one reaching for her, and then refusing to let go to be with anyone else. Dany reached for Jon's arm as they sat with Lyanna and a bunch of her toys.
"Oh, I thought you had cut yourself as well."
Jon twisted his arm to look.
Odd, I thought so too.
He frowned, feeling the burning pain of the metal against his skin. But now that he wasn't worried about his family's safety, he could think clearly, and didn't recall ever having felt the actual cut, or the hot wetness of blood dripping.
Obviously it didn't, only ruined the shirt.
"If that is the only casualty, I suppose we should count ourselves lucky,"
Daenerys mumbled. Jon snorted, but kept quiet, as they distracted themselves playing with Lyanna. Later on, Dany put her down for a nap, falling asleep right alongside the baby, after the emotionally exhausting morning they had had. And Jon decided to leave the room. Instead of making him tired, the tension had electrified him, and he didn't want his manic energy to rouse his wife and daughter. So he decided to leave them be. He chuckled once he opened the door, finding RileyRoxx and Orys standing guard.
I should have guessed, he said, closing the door behind himself. All due respect, my lord, the captain of the guard said, but you're going nowhere without an escort, much less the little lady. He smiled. Thank you for your dutifulness, RileyRoxx, but I won't leave the tower, and I'll call you if I do. But yes, do make sure there is always a guard or two watching the Lady Lyanna.
The man nodded and resumed his post. Jon walked down the corridors, praying he remembered the right way to his previous visit. And he did. He was happy to find out when he opened the door to Arya's dancing room. His sister wasn't there, but he doubted she would mind. So he picked up one of the wooden swords lying about and started hacking at the training dummy, venting his frustration and anxiety on the inanimate object. He lost track of time until her throat cleared.
That is all anger and no skill. Sir, he started, Adam.
I'm afraid that is today's reality, the knight said, picking up another wooden sword.
Come on, Jon. I've heard good things about you, and I haven't had a good practice in nearly 2 decades. Show me what you've got. I just... Come on, boy. I'll take it easy on you.
Jon chuckled, but stepped away from the dummy and took his position, charging. The man smiled and parried, and they were locked in a skilled dance for a few moments.
Good, Adam said. I suppose your title of a knight isn't empty after all. But there's room for improvement. Come on, charge again, and elbow out this time.
Jon smiled at the praise and modified his stance. Ella woke up with a sense of utter tranquility, despite being very much aware that she and Ned were already married before the old gods. Today would be the official and public ceremony for all to see and acknowledge, but she couldn't find it within herself one sliver of a reason to be anxious. She smiled as she turned in bed. Ned was often awake before her, but he always left a flower if he was going to leave the tower, as a sort of good morning gesture. Although she was slightly upset that he had to leave on the morning of their wedding, she was too happy to really care. She brought the tulip, her favourite, up to her nose and breathed in its fresh smell. And then her stomach decided it had been a bad idea. Ella barely had time to reach for the chamber pot before last night's supper returned. She heard the door opening, but was too busy to worry about it until her hair was pulled back and a cold cloth was pressed against her forehead. Then she heard another commotion and her brother's gruffly voice cutting through her heaving. Ash, what's wrong? What's happening?
Everything is perfectly fine, sir.
A woman's voice that she recognized as Isla's replied,
You might want to go and let me handle this.
She's sick,
Adam insisted.
No, she is not,
Isla calmly replied.
I know what I am about, my lord. Get out, big brother,
Ella moaned. Though he was clearly unwilling, Ella heard footsteps and the door again. She spent another few moments bent over the chamber pot until her stomach seemed settled, and she sat back against the bed. Isla gave her the now warm cloth to clean up, and took the chamber pot away, getting another cloth and dipping it into the icy water left to wash when she returned. Ella gratefully put the cloth on her forehead, enjoying its coldness.
I'll have the cook make you some ginger biscuits to leave beside the bed, my lady, Isla said. They're the best thing to eat before even getting up at this stage.
Ella froze. Her mind made sense of the words, and the unpleasant experience she had just gone through made the truth dawn on her. She had felt this before. Once. 18 years ago.
You can't mean...
Isla raised an eyebrow.
Oh, was this the first time? She asked, and Ella nodded. When was the last time you bled?
Ella blinked. She had never been very regular, but ever since the night Ned proposed, she had started to keep count. Just for the sake of wishful thinking. She must have lost track of the days in the madness of the wedding preparations. She forced her memory, and remembered her moonblood coming the day she and Ned had gone to the marketplace to look for Arya's name day gift. Over a moon before.
Did she dare hope? I don't... What if...
The door burst open and Ned walked through, winded, his face twisted with a worried frown.
Your brother, he panted. What is... Are you sick?
Isla smiled and stood up.
I'll leave you to dog.
Ella, still shocked, looked to her husband from her place on the floor. Ned seemed to relax at Isla's smile, but was still worried when he came over to crouch in front of her.
What is it, love?
She bit her lips, crying and smiling, and threw her arms around him. Adam was the picture of unhappiness as he left his sister's chambers, but couldn't deny her anything. He went down to the landing that led to the family bedchambers, where he had enough room to pace, and was close enough to go back if he heard any commotions. His anxiety was interrupted when Ned returned, whistling a tune as he climbed the steps. He stopped when he saw the anxious man scowling.
What happened?
The Lord of Winterfell demanded, a bad feeling sinking in his previously good mood.
I came in to see my sister was awake, but she was sick. What? Ned cried, panicked. What do you mean sick?
I mean she is sick. Lady Isla is with her, but they kicked me out of the bloody room without telling me anything. Ned felt dread clench his heart.
No. She can't be sick. Not now. Not when everything is finally working well for us.
He climbed the remaining steps to his chambers in twos and burst through without knocking. Isla's easiness dismissed any immediate concerns that it was a grave infirmary. But he was concerned about not expecting the words that came out of his wife's mouth.
Ned, I'm pregnant.
His heart failed a beat. What? He asked dumbly.
Ella smiled and cupped his face in her hands. We are going to have a child, my love.
Then her smile fell.
No. No sadness,
he said, smiling and crying as well.
We will be happy, and our child will feel how happy we are, and how badly we're expecting them, and all will be well.
But...
No buts, Ned insisted.
And if he had been in a good mood before, his heart was bursting now.
All will be well. Do you hear me?
She smiled and nodded. They heard from afar the laughter and thundering footsteps announcing Sansa and Arya running over. So Ned helped Ella to her feet just as the door opened again, and his daughters burst through.
Ella, it's time to get ready,
Sansa exclaimed. Ned chuckled, turning to face her and kiss her on the forehead.
I'll see you at the sept.
You most certainly will, she replied, smiling.
Ella chuckled as Adam pulled on his collar again, and he scowled at her as they rode down from the Red Keep in the carriage.
I prefer armour every day to this puffy, fluffy monstrosity.
You can't wear armour to a wedding, big brother. And I do hope you didn't bring knives to the sept either.
I haven't, he said, rolling his eyes at her scepticism.
I haven't, he insisted. I talked to RileyRoxx. He'll have one of his men keep it for me so I can put it on for the feast.
Ella snorted. You're helpless.
After that display with the not funny King's Guard, I'm not taking any chances. RileyRoxx is staying in the tower with a few of his and Jory's best men to make sure Lyanna is safe. That Sir Meryn, though, that man is a dishonour to the Brotherhood.
He is, Ella agreed as she waved. He likes little girls. Hurting little girls. The carriage halted for a few passing small folk, and a little girl approached. Alan pulled his horse closer, but Ella only smiled, taking the flower the girl was offering and adding it to her bouquet. Thank you, dear. It's lovely. The little girl smiled, seeming beyond happy that her simple gift was appreciated. Adam was clenching his fists, disgusted. You're not serious, he said as the carriage resumed moving. I wish I weren't. That orphanage Elia helped in Flea Bottom is now run by one of the orphans that was housed there back then. She told me that she's been doing her best to take in all the girls, since Littlefinger has been taking them younger and younger to satisfy that monster's predilections, and they rarely last very long. Well, that won't be a problem for much longer, he declared through gritted teeth. Do you remember you can't simply kill him, big brother? Please. Death would be a mercy for that creature. I'm going through your medicine cabinet later. If you don't have what I want, I'm sure Oberyn will. Oberyn will love to help. That is what. Well, he won't need to work hard to persuade me. After studying at the Citadel, he probably knows of even better ways. All right, can we change the subject? We're riding to my wedding. You're right, little sister, he chuckled. 18 years later, and here you are, pregnant again. Though this time Ned Stark is... Adam! Fine, I'll behave. Ella rolled her eyes, though she was beyond happy. She had missed her brother too much. The good and the annoying. The carriage finally stopped at the sept, and Adam climbed down, holding his hand out to help his sister out. Ready? He asked at the door. Ella smiled softly. Yes. A septon signalled for the doors to be opened, and a minstrel started to play a soft melody. Ella saw hundreds of people standing at the main sanctuary, but she didn't care about any of them. Unable to wipe the smile off her face, she let her brother lead her into the sanctuary and down the aisle to where Ned waited at the altar, between the father and the mother. Hello again, he said as she took his hand. She only smiled. You take care of her, Lord Stark, Adam said, and Ned understood that it was a plea from a loving brother, not a threat. I will, I promise. The High Septon started his preaching, and Ella tuned him out. Then the man went around the altar and wrapped their hands in a length of white silk and commanded, Look upon each other and say the words. Father, Smith, Warrior. Mother, Maiden, Crone. Stranger. Both Ella and Ned spoke at the same time. I am hers, and she is mine. I am his, and he is mine. From this day until the end of my days, they finished together. And with the white cloak embroidered with grey wolves placed around her shoulders, Ella could only think that all was right in the world. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. I love that chapter and I needed that. I just recorded another chapter that was pretty triggering for me, so this helped cleanse that palette, let me tell you. But they're married. Ah, that was lovely. Adam is the name for Arthur in this, just so that we're clear. And apparently Ayaz is the name for a baby falcon. Who knew? And also that bit with Robert. Geez, the man is so blinded by Lyanna that he's blind to everything that he's causing. I once saw someone say that he wanted to be in love, that he would have been in love with Ned, and that Lyanna was just Ned if she was a woman. I'm just like, I could kind of see that, but he was in the daydreaming about Lyanna Stark, as in, not Lyanna Starling, Lyanna Stark, I want to clarify. But I kind of like that idea. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.